Good morning. Thank you for that introduction, Leslie. I just want to set the stage for Walter's comments, and now that you've heard about what we did in PATH, I want to just tell you briefly about the two levels of evaluation that we're pursuing in PATH. One of which is what the Change Foundation is looking at. We wanted to test a new approach for Ontario with this deep embedding of patients in system redesign as equal partners with providers. And we wanted to be able to prompt system-wide change with a look at improvement work in a broad community partnership. And our measures for that, which you will hear the results of at the panel that starts at 11:45, that's being moderated by Ross Baker, is what was the impact on PATH of the patient participation, and what was the value of having a broad partnership? So you'll hear more about those Change Foundation level measures a little bit later. For the Northumberland community, their goals were to improve healthcare experiences and transitions and to seek and design solutions with the real needs of patients in mind. And some of the measures that Walter's going to tell you about are these types of things. What were the experiences in their care with their care providers? Did we elicit patient-centered care practices? What was the anxiety level of people? And also, did we meet their needs? Did we encourage shared decision-making with providers? And some of the other standardized measures, such as the patient assessment of care for chronic conditions and other system measures that we're all familiar with, both in this project and in HealthLinks, readmissions, unplanned ED visits, et cetera. So Walter Woodkiss was a partner in the PATH project and on the steering committee from the get-go, and he's going to share with you the local system measures.
Thank you, and it's very much a pleasure to be here. A couple of years ago when we started on this project, I had a vision of the people invited me to participate in having things real time, in having data, not looking at what I'd been looking at for years, which was hospital use in Ontario 3 years ago. I'd still look at hospital use in Ontario 3 years ago. But I think today we're going to have a chance to see something that looks quite different. The PATH approach to measurement took an experience-based approach. You're going to see some videos today which are really interesting. And I think what we set out to do was to measure, first off, what matters to patients and to caregivers. And those stories that we started with, the transitions work, really motivated what we would be focused on. And Dr. Mukesh Bhargava next, he says, measure what matters over time and in real time. And I'm going to show you what that looks like a little bit in our experience. So we had 4 broad streams of information and an approach. First off, and what you'll see most today, are experience measures for regular monitoring. So what do we want to stay on top of? We want to stay on top of understanding what the patient's experience is in the community today. We also want to understand how patients are using the technology and portal. Characterizing the population, so understanding who are the people coming in, what kinds of challenges are they facing, what kinds of needs do they have, and what barriers do they initially face, and are we starting to resolve some of those, as well as the system level indicators, which I won't talk about today. So what's different about PATH? First thing that's different about PATH is that the patient voice was central to the selection of the measures that are important. So we did not look down the ministry's list of accountability indicators when we started this project. We started with the patients and we said, what matters? The second real feature is that reporting is real time. So how can a system adapt and make changes and address the needs when it's needs from 2 years ago that we're looking at? No, we need to know today. And the final piece is that in an openness, so standardized measurement's quite important, but we really needed to be getting at the things that are most important. And our measures were dynamic, and the questions and response items changed and continue to change throughout the project based on client and PATH team feedback. So if people are finding these questions don't make sense, this is not what I'm looking for, these aren't the challenges, then we have adapted. It's made measurement a little bit of a challenge over time, but we've adapted to it. It's made it more meaningful. We want, the purpose of the technology and the tablets and people putting in information is not so we get to track something. It's so that patients find it useful and providers also find it useful. The Evaluation subcommittee, which is where we set the measure, so how did we develop the measures? We started with the inputs that we had gained, and then we had representation first off from Patients Canada, and we have questions in that we're asking that we wouldn't have asked if we didn't have Patients Canada at the table. Measurement expertise from our group through the System Performance Research Network. Practical value from the PATH team, the frontline people working with the caregivers, with the transition coaches, the peer coaches, as well as strategic importance from the Change Foundation. What are the overall goals of this program, and how are we likely to achieve them? Can we be measuring them along the way? And that really made a difference. We focused on those measures that were important to understand the patient experience and for patients themselves to monitor how things were going for them. Focus on the purpose of the patient's encounters with providers. So what were they seeking from the health system? To what extent could we measure whether the health system was meeting their needs, whatever their needs might have been? And informed by the qualitative research on the challenges faced by patients and caregivers, led really by Marianne, in a lot of really interesting stories that came out, and how is PATH going to help people in the Northumberland County? So how did we go about measuring? So great thanks to QOC for having enabled all of this measurement, the technology platforms. Patients and caregivers create plans and goals through a portal. So longer text things, they select out, they identify and write in what is important to them. Patients use the tablets to monitor their goals and report on experiences as they have the experiences. It's not just a survey that goes out 6 weeks later. Walk out of an appointment, they can enter information immediately. And then those data are available immediately. We decided to report weekly as a feasibility and to align with the other team activities within PATH, so what makes sense, right? Not too much information all the time, people, and also to have enough sample to actually say these are the experiences of, not just one person, but, a number of people last week. The venue for doing this is through a report that we put out weekly called the PATH Monday Report. So you see here the date on that report is March 9th. That was yesterday. This report went out just before yesterday evening's session started. And the data include data up till Saturday. So I'm going to show you data from Saturday. That's not quite common. And that's what we set out a couple years ago to try to do, to change how we thought about things and what was important to people. I'm going to put up a few indicators, just a bit of an overview of what we're tracking. And it's not comprehensive. The report has about 20 or 30 items that we report on, and I'm just going to put out about 4. The report comes with a front page that is no more than a page, usually often only a half page, that highlights things that we're noticing based on the data that are coming in, where things are trending. So things, for example, that this week there were both newly reported and recently resolved needs. So in this past week, some people had resolved challenges with difficulty breathing. Others had new challenges of difficulty swallowing, for example, and these are tracked. People are reporting on things. There are also physical and social emotional domains that didn't change in the past week. 3 out of 4 indicators that we report on about patient-provider communication increased or maintained at 100% score this week. So that was a success we celebrate. We let people know how things are going. But not only highlighting those things that are positively trending, so the Collaborate tool, which I'll show you in a minute, was down a couple points this week, and showing that the patients reporting the collaboration and the shared communication with the providers hadn't necessarily taken all of their most important issues. Still quite good, but we watch things pretty closely. And then overall ratings, just to get a sense of the kinds of indicators. Now, we put out these reports, and if you're looking at these things all the time, you get used to them, but you're not. So this is a question that we ask of patients to respond to. I had all the services that I needed to meet my needs. That's kind of an important question to people. And what they can rate this as strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. We thought of many ways of reporting. The PATH team wanted to know the exact number of people, or the number of people reporting into each of those different response categories, as well as whether it was trending positive. So the top 2 boxes are what we call the positive rating, and those are indicated by the black line. And then we can see exactly, so that gives us a very overall rating. So we see last week, everybody was either strongly agree or agree, with about half of the people on either side. And we watch for those people. So this is 24 weeks of data. You see there around 13 and 14. You can see this pattern to a number of slides. That was just over the Christmas holidays. People took a little bit of a holiday, stepped back a little bit, and we noticed right away on the trending that people were noting. And you'll see this on a number of the graphs. They weren't getting quite the attention that they needed at that time. And then we were ramped back up in January and really got out there with an effort. So this is the kind of thing in real time. That would have just been, nobody would have even noticed normally, right? But it really was a gap, I think. Did you feel that you had to repeat your health condition and information unnecessarily? So here's an important question to people. People had a lot of challenges. So now you see that we've actually done, there have been definitely improvements on here. We started out in the fall. Throughout the fall, there was always a few people either indicating frequently or always, and that has really diminished a lot lately into the new year especially. So that's been one of the, I think, the successes of the program over time. You're seeing data back to about September here. So we have 24 weeks of data that we're reporting on here. Again, you see this weekly reporting and the number of people who are responding each week. There's one gap in there because we need 5 people each week just to protect a little bit of confidentiality and patient along that front. This is Collaborate, so I mentioned earlier it was down 6 points over the week. So this is a composite of 3 questions that are asked of patients, and the items are, was every effort made to listen to things that matter most? Was every effort made to include what matters most to you in choosing the next steps for you? And was every effort made to help you understand your health issues? So those 3 items that have come out of other research, they've been validated too, and we've been using this throughout the, so we report both on the indicators as well as the overall collaboration scale. Now this is a bit more challenging, but this really came from the patient focus, right? People go to healthcare and they are anxious about their concerns. And it's very important to them when they leave that they are not as anxious, that they know a little more. And so we really paid close attention to this. This only shows the 4 more recent weeks because it actually has a lot of information. And so no anxiety, some anxiety, a lot of anxiety. We asked people their rating before their appointment and their rating after any encounter. It could be a home care provider in the home. It could be a physician that they've seen. It could have been a clinic visit. And so we see here, we're looking at how many people, and for here we want to know, our positive rating here is whether people's are better off after, if their anxiety levels are lower after their appointment compared to before. And this being something that we report on and stay quite on top of. Finally, I mean, from the technology, there are a couple pieces that we ask patients, but one thing we want to know, were the PATH technology tools easy for you to use? And this is used really with the transition coaches and the people out in the community to understand where, then to go out and say, you know, what are your challenges with the technology? Where are your challenges if you're still having them? And this has been something that has fluctuated up and down. I mean, again, we see, you know, there wasn't a lot of resources around to support people over the Christmas holiday again. But otherwise has generally trended up for us over the period of time. Thanks very much to the peer coaches, really being the asset here. Providers themselves are also reporting in on a weekly basis that we ask them to report in, and here's just a sample of some of the information. There aren't as many providers who are reporting in, so we just produce the data monthly on this. And this is, did having the patient's information and knowing their needs save time? Because they can have that with them right on screen, and they don't need, certainly some things that we've found are either the patients don't know what to tell the physician, or the physicians actually themselves, the patients come in with too much information. So this is really co-designed around which indicators, and people are actually even indicating in on, we're mostly focused on experience, but the providers were also interested in, for heart failure patients, to be monitoring some very specific clinical markers, and there are eight disease conditions that are being reported in and monitored as well, being used. So what are some of the other measures? The patient activation measures we measured, that's, you know, patients' engagement in their care. We expect that to change, not on a weekly basis, but over time from the beginning to the end. So we have baseline measurement of that, as well as the patient assessment of chronic care. And we're looking at, as Genevieve had indicated, the system-level measures as well. So what can we say? We're still in the process of this progress, but some of the early lessons. First off is focusing on the measures that are important to patients for monitoring. I think there's really 2 pieces to this. One, it ensures that the providers stay focused on things that are important to patients. So if patients are going in and they're saying, these are my issues, providers can stay focused on that. And it ensures that patients themselves are interested in tracking and reporting on this information. It's not just about doing a service for other people, it's helping themselves as well. including measures that are important to providers to provide care. So we have focused a lot on patient experience, but there are also clinical measures, and they do need to be captured. And this has been done on a disease-specific basis at the request of providers. But of course, when we're into individual diseases, not as many people would have, for example, heart failure. And so we're not reporting up that here today. But this is also important for the providers to think this is important, because they are interested in people's values on a number of these indicators. Keep the reporting tool as simple as possible. So have something meaningful that people can look at that can be meaningful to them. And we're still battling with this. You saw those charts and graphs up there, but we're trying to keep things as straightforward as possible and not to make it too complex so that people can use it in their decision making. And being flexible. Measurement is meant to be useful, and if it doesn't work quite right, then modify the measurement. Now, I don't mean like throw out the things that you need to improve, but if people themselves are responding and they're saying, this actually isn't, I'm not able to enter my goals, or I'm not able to monitor my progress on my goals, then change the way you do it. Make it useful. I think those are some of the early lessons that we're having with this project, and it's really been, it's a thrill to be able to say, I've got information from Saturday, and let's work on it. Thank you.